So I came up with this topic of remembering, as I often hear people say, I'm not practicing enough, or um, the sense that they're still experiencing ruminations or not finding mindfulness in everyday living. So a sense of frustration, and whether it's time constraints or frustration with sitting or whatever it is. And I think this perhaps comes from what the Buddhist path looked like. He went away from daily life to find enlightenment. But there's also his wife's path. There isn't much written about her, yet many believe she reached enlightenment while tending the house and family. This reminds me that our path can also unfold in everyday life. And after a recent retreat with Pamela Weiss, she mentioned that this is where she thinks we need to turn our attention to. This is the excitement of ours to put forth and future generations to further establish. Mindfulness in every day, so that sitting, indeed, formal sitting and meditation is important. But so is how we take the practice off the cushion. We can bring mindfulness into simple acts of kindness, remembering to hold the door open for a stranger, or helping someone in a store reach for something on a shelf, or receiving help ourselves. These are moments when we are aware and our hearts are open. So we can slow down, be present for our loved ones, remember to speak with pauses, and to listen not only with our ears, but also our hearts. And yesterday I was on my way to the grocery store and I noticed a little cup of water outside beneath a bush. And it sparked a curiosity in me, and I thought, oh, there's obviously a little animal or something living here that someone's tending to. And then when I came out of the store employee was looking for an injured bird she'd seen earlier. So what does it mean to be truly in this moment? To ride the waves of emotions, thoughts, and experiences without trying to control or fix them. How does it feel to live this moment just as it is? And how does it feel to let go of our agenda and notice, as this store employee did, the world around us? She could have been hurried to get to work. She could have been looking at her phone, texting, or tangled in thought of something that happened earlier. So much so that she wouldn't have noticed anything around her. She wouldn't have noticed the injured bird. So we can pause, we can relax, and we can open to what we see and experience around us. We can cultivate a relaxed and receptive awareness. So maybe we remember to pause during our day, noticing the sound of an ambulance, and pausing and holding the person inside and their loved ones in our heart. Is there any better time to wake up? Tara Brach calls this the power of heart presence. It can be a simple savoring of the smell of spring blossoms, the touch of cool air on our face, or the sight of a little cup of water under a bush. living the curiosity of our experience. And then we dive deeper into the moment. We begin to notice what is arising and falling away, and we let what is here be here. No fixing, controlling, not holding on or pushing away. So just presence, the awe of the moment. So the poet Rilke writes, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will find gradually, without noticing it, live along some distance day into the answer." What is it like to be curious, to have what is in Zen is called don't know mind or beginner's mind? As if this moment was new. So let's do a short practice here. We're just going to take a moment now and pause and think of a situation, maybe something in your future, and maybe it's something you're thinking might not go too well. Something in the future, and you might be saying, "I know how this is going to play out. I know what's going to happen." So just bringing to mind a situation. It could be in a large scale or just a small scale. Bring in mind a situation where you're kind of have some maybe anxiety about, because you kind of are already knowing how it's going to turn out. You might feel the facial expression, your facial expression. Ponder, "I know what is going to happen," or you might feel what it feels like in the heart, the breath, or your stomach. Now I'll bring to mind the same situation and attune to, "I don't know what is going to happen." And what do you notice? You let go of the knowing or the mind that's clinging to a certain way of unfolding. And you relax. You might notice a whole new experience. So as we slowly begin to realize we don't need to travel to an island retreat or a mountain to experience new sights or sounds, because that is what going on a trip usually does. It wakes us up. Everything seems new and alive. There's so much right here when we travel into this moment. Via our hearts, so we let go of knowing the future or recalling the past. In his poem, The Red Wheelbarrow, the poet William Carlos Williams writes, "So much depends upon a red wheelbarrow glazed with rain water beside the white chickens." It's as if the poet is saying so much depends on being present. The ordinary becomes sacred. The term sati in Pali, which also translates to mindfulness, means memory or recollection. Emphasizing the ability to remember and be aware of the present moment. So in this instance, what could have easily been passed by, a mere wheelbarrow, is illuminated and appreciated for its job and heavy lifting as it sits resting between journeys. And another poet, I'm sure most of you have heard of, is Mary Oliver, who wrote a poem called Summer Day. She begins this with the I don't know mind. Who made the world? Who made the swan, the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean. The one that has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who's moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who's gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. And now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? So, who made this world? The poet begins and pauses with curiosity and the don't know mind, and continuing on with who made the grasshopper. And then she relaxes, and kneeling down into the grass, she attunes to the present moment. I do know how to pay attention. And as if embracing impermanence and compassion, doesn't everything die at last and too soon? And we may live as if we have so much time, yet how do we live when we remember that our time here is precious? Do we stay stuck in ruminations of the past or the future, or do we fling ourselves into the world knowing we don't know how long this life, this precious life, is going to last? Then the poet turns as if she questions herself. Tell me, what else should I have done? As if she realizes suddenly how amazing it is to be with a creature so small and delicate, as if now seeing herself too as small and delicate, expanding out to all living beings. As if she begins to realize her and the grasshopper are living parallel lives. They both seem to be gazing around with their enormous and complicated eyes, and both flinging themselves into the grass in this moment. And in this way, the poet begins to show us the two wings of mindfulness. The first wing, wisdom, or seeing clearly. And the second wing, compassion, for this fleeting and precious life. And these two wings we can bring into our daily lives as well. Like the poet and the grasshopper, we can snap our wings of mindfulness open and float away into the day. The poet allows us to become one with her surroundings as she experiences them, and then pauses and ponders. What are we to do with this one precious life? So this is again demonstrated by a Palestinian poet, Naomi Shihab-Nye, in her poem Gate A4. Wandering around the Albuquerque airport terminal after learning my flight had been delayed 4 hours, I heard an announcement. If anyone in the vicinity of Gate A4 understands any Arabic, please come to the gate immediately. Well, one pauses these days. Gate A4 was my own gate. I went there. An older woman in full Palestinian embroidered dress, just like my grandma wore, was crumpled to the floor wailing. "Help," said the flight attendant, or the flight agent. "Talk to her. What is her problem? We told her the flight was going to be late and she did this." I stooped to put my arm around the woman and spoke haltingly. "Shudao, Shubi Duk Habi, Stani Shaway, Shubit Siwi." The minute she heard any word she knew, however poorly used, she stopped crying. She thought the flight had been canceled entirely. She needed to be in El Paso for a major medical treatment the next day. I said, "No, we're fine. You'll get there. Just later. Who is picking you up? Let's call him." We called her son. I spoke with him in English. I told him I would stay with his mother till we got on the plane and ride next to her. She talked to him. Then we called her other sons just for the fun of it. Then we called my dad, and he and she spoke for a while in Arabic, and found out, of course, they have 10 shared friends. Then I thought, just for the heck of it, why not call some Palestinian poets I know and let them chat with her? This all took up 2 hours. She was laughing a lot by then, telling of her life, patting my knee, answering questions. She had pulled a sack of homemade mamu cookies, little powdered sugar crumbly mounds stuffed with dates and nugs from her bag, and was offering them all to all the women at the gate. To my amazement, not a single woman declined one. It was like a sacrament. the traveler from Argentina, the mom from California, the lovely woman from Laredo. We were all covered with the same powdered sugar and smiling. There is no better cookie. And then the airline broke out with free apple juice from huge coolers, and 2 little girls from our flight ran around serving it. And they were covered with powdered sugar too. And I noticed my new best friend, by now we were holding hands, had a potted plant poking out of her bag, some medicinal thing with green furry leaves. Such an old country tradition, always carry a plant, always stay rooted somewhere. And I looked around at the gate of late and weary ones, and I thought, this is the world I want to live in. The shared world. Not a single person in that gate, once the crying of confusion stopped, seemed apprehensive about any other person. They took the cookies. I wanted to hug all those women too. This can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. So here the poet embraces a moment in an airport, a delayed flight, and experiences kindness and transforms confusion into connection. It was a shared world. This is the world I want to live in, she says. And then she encourages us, this can still happen anywhere. Not everything is lost. Whether on the cushion or walking to a store or waiting in an airport or walking by a wheelbarrow, we're invited to live fully, to notice, and to care. So this can still happen anywhere, she says. And this is something I discovered when I was a substitute teacher years ago. When I walked into a room 204, and the felt sense in the room was different from the beginning. And the desks were all arranged in a large circle, including the teacher's desk. And then the 4th grade students came in as if they were going someplace other than school. Their faces were lit up, like they were going to get ice cream or maybe to Disneyland or something. And yet there was also this calmness and respectfulness for each other as they placed their backpacks along the back of the room in their cubby holes. I was to learn later that this was one of the top class in the 4th grade at this school and in the district. And the teacher was away for a couple of days as she was traveling to give a talk to administrators on what made her students so successful. It was quickly evident that it was love, that they missed her dearly, and that this was the first of 3 days that she would be gone. On the last day, as a surprise for the teacher, I asked them if they'd like to make her a welcome back card, and we'd have them on her desk when she came back. And that is when I learned the depth of their love for this teacher. Their cards filled with pictures and notes to her was a great indication of what she gave to each of them. The children drew her favorite flower, her favorite bird, her home state, her pets, her partner, and hearts, lots and lots of hearts. For this teacher wore heart-rimmed glasses because that's the way she told them she wanted to see the world and everyone in it, through eyes of love. So this is where mindfulness thrives, in its ordinary moments, in its everyday. And then I'll end this talk with one more poem, if we manage this one. It's by the same poet, Naomi Shayab Nye. So in a challenging moment, she wrote this poem, Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop, and the passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans, with the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows. And you will see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is you I've been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. And it's a beautiful poem on its own, how kindness follows you everywhere like a shadow or a friend. And her inspiration for this poem came from a difficult time on her honeymoon when she and her new husband were traveling across a remote part of Colombia on a bus, and it was robbed. And a man was killed, and her husband lost everything: money, passports, IDs. And this poem arose, she says, while she sat in a square waiting for her husband as he tried to replace their travel documents and their traveler's checks. Back in those days, we had traveler's checks. And as she waited there in the square, a stranger approached her and displayed a gesture of loving kindness to her, witnessing her sadness. So the stranger helping an American tourist, and the poet in a foreign plaza, experiencing sorrow, found only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is you I have been looking for." And it goes everywhere with you, like a shadow or a friend. So she experienced the sorrow, and as if remembering not to be lost in it, she also found the joy of kindness. So the Buddha's own story points to this as well. As he'd been so entranced by pleasure, the path of denial at first looked like the way to freedom. He deprived himself of food, eating one sesame seed a day. He deprived himself of sleep. And after several years, the Buddha found himself emaciated and sick, and no closer to the spiritual liberation he yearned for. So he made his way to the banks of a nearby river, and lying there nearly dead, he cried out, "Surely there must be another way to enlightenment." He closed his eyes and a dreamlike memory from his childhood arose. And it was an annual celebration of spring plowing, and his nurses had left him resting under a rose apple tree at the edge of the fields. And sitting in the cool shade of the tree, he as a child watched the men at work, sweat pouring down their face, oxen straining to pull the plows. And in the cut grasses and the overturned soil, he could see the insects dying and their eggs scattered. And sorrow arose in Siddhartha for the suffering that all beings experience. And in the tenderness of this compassion, he felt deeply opened. And he looked up and was struck by how brilliantly blue the sky was, and how the birds were dipping and soaring, and how the air was thick and sweet with the fragrance of apple blossoms. In the flow and the mystery of life, there was room for the immensity of joy and sorrow. He felt completely at peace. And in that memory, he rediscovered the joy and sorrow of life, and the feeling of compassion for all beings, and the path of awakening. So whatever we meet in our meditation or through our lives, perhaps it's a letting down of the armoring of our hearts and not being deterred by what we experience, but gradually enlightened by it. So let's go ahead and practice for about 20 minutes. So you can turn your cameras off if that feels more comfortable, or if you want to leave them on, whatever best serves your practice. It's an invitation to experience this moment, not looking for anything. A moment to live everything. So sitting in a comfortable seated position, whatever posture best supports you, or if you find lying down better, that's fine as well. If you're sitting, a posture that's alert and relaxed, supports openness and an ability to pay attention. Closing your eyes gently, or having a downward gaze. Taking a moment to pause and notice the breath. Just as the poet observes ordinary things, everyday things. We too can pay attention. You might notice as you breathe in the air, going into your nostrils or touching your nostrils. Or the sense of the rising and falling of your belly. Maybe to get a deeper felt sense, you might put a hand on your belly. Writing this moment, this breath. The preciousness of this life can be felt just with the breath. You might notice your left foot making contact with the earth. If you're sitting, or your right foot just like that potted plant that the woman was carrying around, being rooted in wherever you go. Rooted in every moment. You might notice your calves, your left calf, your right calf. You might notice them from the inside out. The muscles, the bones. And the skin. The fabric or the air. Noticing your knees. How much depends on them. Notice your sit bones. and your back. And you might experience torso, from the inside out. This preciousness of life. Stomach, the muscles, bring up to our lungs. How extraordinary it is. That we breathe, or that the breath breathes itself. Noticing your shoulders, your arms, your hands. How unique and different they are. Each with fingerprints. Notice your neck and your face. Your jaw, the inside of your mouth, your forehead, place of expressions. Notice your ears. Bringing and extending our awareness to our environment, our sounds that are arriving, that are being delivered to you. We're not picking and choosing sounds. Rather, we're noticing. The aliveness that is not only within, but also all around us. Judging the sounds or noticing if we're trying to push them away. And relaxing with them. Relaxing in this moment. Some thought comes to mind of something you might have to do, something you want to remember or don't want to forget. Relaxing with that as well, not engaging with it or having to do something, but opening. Remembering right now we're practicing the preciousness of this life, this moment. We turn our attention back to the breath or our body or sounds. They're all rooted in this moment. resting and relaxing. And the beauty of the aliveness of this moment. This too is what we can do with our one precious life. And as we come to the end of our meditation, we arrive here. Offer a little metta as we sit together and finding the wish of our hearts. For ourselves and our friends here, and for those known and unknown. Expanding out to include all beings, two-legged and four-legged, the flying and the swimming. May we and all beings know safety and ease. May we know happiness and peace. And may the benefit and the merit of this practice be for all beings everywhere. Deep bow to you for your practice, and you take a couple of deep breaths. Slowly open your eyes, come back into our Zoom room. And extending our practice as we move into a mindful movement, guided by Ellie or
Thank you so much, Michelle, and welcome everyone. I've got some four-legged friends who will be moving with us perhaps. So maybe what I would offer first is we tend to use our hands and our wrists a lot during the day, and this is a wonderful way to release the hands. You can do this seated or standing. So just gently bringing the backs of your hands together and maybe tilting your left ear towards your left shoulder. You could open the mouth and that will just deepen this stretch gently. And everything that we do today is an offering for you to turn towards your experience and see what you need. We can take this over to right ear, right shoulder. And just knowing that we're honoring our bodies. So if anything that I am doing doesn't feel good, you make any adjustment that you need. And then maybe just taking the hands out in front of you and we can wave at each other. You can do this quite quickly, generate a little bit of energy. You can slow it down. And then maybe just interlacing the hands behind the head and starting with just a gentle lean from side to side. So inviting the left elbow to drop. You could gently pull back the right elbow, maybe gently even closing the eyes or softening the gaze. And just deepening the breath and inviting an openness through the heart space. And then gently bringing us through center. We can take our opposite right elbow towards the floor, gently drawing the left elbow back and just breathing in and out. Inviting a broadness across the chest. Let's come back to center. And then we can offer some gentle circles. And this can start really slowly, just inviting this to be a movement of the neck in isolation. If you feel quite warm in the upper body, you could lean a little further forward and a little further back. And again, not worrying about what this looks like, just feeling into what you need. And then maybe just gently switching directions. And if it feels difficult to keep these elbows as far away from each other as possible, you can just let them be a little looser. And then let's release the arms down. I'm going to offer 2 variations of this next movement, and the joy of being a yoga teacher who teaches online is that because you're muted, you can make as much noise as you want, as much sound, and nobody hears you. When I do this in person, people are very self-conscious, but what we're going to do, I'll show you the 2 options, is we're going to squeeze our shoulders up towards our ears, and then, really let some sound out. Our vagus nerve gets quite massaged when we exhale through the mouth with sound. So squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. The alternate version, for those with a little more energy, is you can reach up to the sky. You can make fists with your hands and then pull down. Let's try that one more time. Big reach up. Wonderful. Let's just gently roll the shoulders back. And again, letting the exhale be something that happens naturally through the nose, or inviting a little bit of sighing or sound through the mouth. And we'll maybe do 2 more things. If you'd like to bring your palms to heart center, we'll just take a few slow breaths where we inhale, reach up. You can connect the palms overhead. Exhale, draw the thumbs back to heart center. We'll do 2 more. Inhale, gathering energy, reaching. Exhale, grounding and releasing. 1 more. Inhale up. Exhale down. And then if you want to grab wrist to wrist, this can be sort of towards the forehead or gently overhead. And we're just going to gently lean over to our left. You can invite the shoulder to drop. You can invite the ear to melt down. And again, you can close the eyes or soften the gaze. And just invite a lengthening through the right side body. We can gently come back to center. The wrists like to take turns being on top, so you can gently switch which wrist is on top, and then take that gentle lean over to the right. Again, inviting that sensation of melting down and lengthening through your left side body. We'll come back to center, interlace the hands behind the head, and just a variation of our cat and cow. So on the in-breath, just leaning back, arching and opening the chest. On the exhale, rounding, let the elbows come together. 2 more. Inhale, open, broadening. Exhale, rounding. 1 more. Take your last breath in and your last breath out. And then gently release the arms. Give everything a little shake out. And thank you so much. I will turn it back to Michele.